Ross, and I'm here with Mark, and we're at our next Flip Side of America quick trip tip advisory location.
Yes.
I'm going to get that right. Eventually. But Mark, one of the things I wanted to bring up, and just that little serious note, is sometimes as you're going through a location or a place, little locations like this is actually Eutaw Springs, and we're in Eutaw, South Carolina. We forget often that there were people long ago who gave their lives so we can have the freedom that we enjoy today. Mark, you actually served in the military.
In the Air Force, yep.
He served in the military. And we don't realize, or we look at these things as we go flying past them, and do not realize that there were actually people here who actually fought and died and gave their lives for us to have the freedom that we enjoy. It may be a small place, it may be just some place you could come for a day or have a picnic. But the great part about it is this is our history. And one of the things you ought to take a little bit of time is to take a look at it. What do you think?
Absolutely.
Mark, you're a little bit of a history buff. This is one of these strange battles that actually occurred in the American Revolution. We didn't really win this battle, but they considered a battle of victory.
Of strategic importance. And the two generals here, there was General Nathaniel Greene and General Stuart of the British Army, and the losses were pretty even on both sides, with the Americans losing about 500.
Oh, wow!
Still going on, apparently.
Battle's still going on, apparently.
So that was...
kind of like a cannon fire.
Yeah, which is probably pretty similar to what they had back in 1781 when the battle took place. But as I was saying, the American forces lost about 500 and the British lost about 700. So it was pretty even in the loss ratio, but where it was noted was that the Americans were able to fend off the British, and it was resulting in them withdrawing back to Charleston. So,
because the British really wanted the South.
Absolutely, and this is a strategic importance to them. So there you go.
That was a cannon or something.
That was a cannon. That was not a gunshot.
You ready?
Yep.
Okay, stay right in there. And hi, I'm Russ Rutan. Welcome to Flip Side of America. I'm here with
Mark Weissong, and today we are standing on Sullivan's Island and we are visiting Fort Moultrie.
Where's Fort Moultrie?
Well, Fort Moultrie is that way, Russ.
Oh, that's right.
But behind you is Fort Sumter, and then directly to our left is the lighthouse on Morris Island. So we have a lot of places we're going to visit today, and we have a lot of amazing things we're going to see.
And you saw the boat just go by. That's pretty cool. And there's a lot of dolphin playing in the harbor, so it's really cool.
Okay.
Yes, Mark, we are at Fort Moultrie. But this wasn't originally Fort Moultrie. It actually was originally Fort Sullivan's Island. They changed the name later on.
Well, and so here are some of the other things that you need to know. Fort Moultrie saw extensive use from the Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, the Civil War, and even all the way through World War II.
Well, hey, let's find out a little bit more. Let's take a look around.
Yes, today we're going to explore Fort Moultrie. Now, Fort Moultrie has quite an extensive history behind it. Thus, we're not going to be able to make it all the way through Fort Moultrie today. So we're going to have one of those to be continued moments. We'll get the first part today, and then we'll come back later and get the next part. As we stated, Fort Moultrie actually began its career as Fort Sullivan. Now, Fort Sullivan was mainly built of palmetto logs. This is why, when you hear about the state of South Carolina, it's known as the Palmetto State. The nickname Palmetto State actually came from the use of the palmetto logs to build Fort Sullivan. Fort Sullivan was renamed Fort Moultrie for the U.S. Patriot commander in the Battle of Sullivan's Island, General William Moultrie, during the British occupation in 1780 to 1782. And Fort Moultrie was built in 1776, just at the beginning of the Revolution. As Fort Moultrie was opened, Colonel Moultrie took command of the Sullivan Island location on March 2, 1776. This included a garrison of 413 men, known as the 2nd South Carolina Regiment of Infantry. And there were also 22 men of the 4th South Carolina Regiment of Artillery. Basically, the fort was built in a square, and they used parallel rows of palmetto logs 10 feet high. And then what they did was they filled it with 16 feet of sand. So you have to look at it. They had sand covering these palmetto logs. This turned out in history to be a very brilliant move, because as the British came to take Fort Moultrie, they fired upon it. And upon firing upon Fort Moultrie, the cannonballs actually bounced off the palmetto logs. Rather, they absorbed the shock of the cannonballs. Peter Parker came in with 9 warships, came in to take over Fort Moultrie, had a difficult time. Main reason for Fort Moultrie, obviously, was to defend the Charleston Harbor. Fort Moultrie wasn't just a fort. It actually was a fortification. There were multiple forts and multiple areas within the Sullivan Island area. However, in the Revolutionary War, the British did eventually capture Fort Moultrie during the part of the siege of Charleston in 1780. They didn't really capture the fort so much as they captured the town of Charleston. Eventually, the colonists did win the war, as we know, and the troops departed in 1782. As I said, this really wasn't just a fort, it was a series of forts. As you'll see as we go on, these forts actually came all the way down, pretty much down Sullivan's Island. They actually went over to Mount Pleasant, and across the way, they built Fort Sumter. Fort Moultrie did not change much over the period of time until the Civil War. Then the Civil War came about, and what we're going to do when we continue next time is we're going to talk a little bit more about the Civil War and Fort Moultrie's position in the Civil War. Until then, as they say, the story will continue.
Before we go, I do want to say thank you to a couple people. I'd like to say thank you to Drew Owen. He's our cameraman today. And Mick and Jack, they're off kind of doing other stuff, but they helped shoot the roll B footage today. So guys, thank you very much.
You also can go see Fort Fremont. It's right here in Beaufort as well. It's across the way from Parris Island. As a matter of fact, that's what it was set up to protect, was Parris Island. And if you don't know about Parris Island, you ought to ask any Marine.
The fort still stands today, and as you can see, it's in a little bit of rough shape, but it is fun, however a little bit dangerous, to go wandering through this fort. It is in a hidden location, back away, but it's well worth a trip if you take the time to find it.
We're here at the entrance to the Stumphouse Tunnel. One of the great things is the echo. Hopefully you can hear that echo. Mark, when we go in there, we're going to start walking, and as you can see, it's real dark. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the history of the Stumphouse Tunnel, okay?
Absolutely.
Come on, let's go.
The Stumphouse Tunnel was started in 1852 to connect the railroad from Charleston to Knoxville. By 1856, the George Collier Company of London brought many Irish miners to the area for this project. Most of the workers lived in a housing on top of Stumphouse Mountain called Tunnel Hill. By 1859, the state of South Carolina had spent over $1 million on the tunnel. However, with the start of the Civil War and lack of funds, they were forced to stop its construction.
When they stopped the tunnel, they had already excavated to a length of 4,300 feet of the planned 5,800 feet. The tunnel measures 17 feet wide by 25 feet high, and midway through the tunnel is a 16-foot by 20-foot air shaft that extends the 60 feet upwards to the surface. The shaft allows for a consistent cool breeze to flow out the tunnel year-round. It also produces condensation, and the tunnel is usually pretty damp. Beginning in the 1950s, Stumphouse Tunnel was used by Clemson University to grow blue cheese. It was then moved in the 1970s to an air-conditioned cheese ripening room where the tunnel's environment was mimicked. Today, the tunnel is accessible only by foot. It's a quarter of a mile in length, and flashlights are needed to walk around the tunnel. The tunnel was mined from both ends. However, today, the western end is submerged under Crystal Lake and the two portions never met. So if you want to see that end, you're going to have scuba gear. As you walk through the tunnel, look along the walls and roof area. You'll eventually see little bats about the size of small mice, and you'll even see some frogs. As part of the planned Blue Ridge Railroad, two other tunnels were begun in the 1850s. Middle Tunnel, a quarter of a mile from Stumphouse Tunnel, was successfully completed but mostly collapsed and partially sealed off by the mid-1950s. Saddle Tunnel, which was also begun a short distance away, about a mile and a half, is partially completed, yet it's mostly submerged again by a small lake. So again, if you want to see it, you got to strap on the scuba gear and go diving. Only the entrance of the land tunnel is visible today, but both tunnels are really only accessible by foot. Middle Tunnel, the closer of the two tunnels, is the only one of these two that can be entered, and it's real risky, so be careful. The hike to Middle Tunnel is relatively short, but it's over pretty rough terrain. The tunnel was backfilled with dirt, however, a small hole has been dug out that allows you to get in it. To visit the third and furthest tunnel, which is Saddle Tunnel, return to the main trail and continue along to the railroad grade for approximately a mile and a half. Allow for plenty of time and a few wrong turns. A compass and a topographical map will really help, or somebody who's been there before.
You know, Mark, going through that tunnel, I got a little wet. It was dark, and it was cold. Even on a warm summer's day like today, it was cold.
Yeah, absolutely. It blows at a steady 54 degrees, so it's very refreshing this time of year.
And this place is great, not only just to come up and see the tunnel, but it's a great place to come and bring your family to picnic, camp, just hang out, hike.
Absolutely, and there's plenty of places like this nestled throughout this area where you can kind of settle your family in and have a really nice picnic and a nice, easy, shady afternoon.
And there's also a falls. I mean, just a hop and skip from here, there's a beautiful falls.
Yeah, the Issaquena Falls, and there's a pretty awesome story that goes with it.
The minute you arrive at the Sheldon Church ruins on 4 acres in Yemassee, you know you have encountered a place with a remarkable personal and lasting chapter of events. Shaded by the beautiful oak trees, you immediately feel its sacred past and ask yourself if only these demolished walls could talk. The Sheldon Church, owned and managed by St. Helena's Church of Beaufort, was initially known as the Prince William Parish Church. It had its first service in 1757 and was one of the first churches built in the temple architectural style in the United States. But its dramatic history reveals its immeasurable value to all who visit. It was first developed in the 1740s and 1750s by a budding Newberry plantation owner, William Bull. During the Revolutionary War, it was burned by the British troops. In 1779, it was rebuilt from the ashes between 1825 and 1826, only to be burned a second time in 1865 by General Sherman's troops. It was then ransacked by local homeowners looking for materials to rebuild after the war. Now just a framework of the former building, Sheldon Church ruins, listed on the National Register, has never lost its assessment of resurgence from the flames. Although its structure has been altered, its representation of recovery is timeless. Many choose to get married there. If you are a member of the parish church, with their approval, you can. Even among the destruction, the respect for the church continues to enable new generations' futures. The Sheldon Church ruins are open daily to the public, and it is free of charge to visit.
Hi, my name is Phyllis Hughes, and I'm the president of the Dorchester County Historical Society. We are here today at the Koger-Murray-Carroll House that was built in the 1780s. The house was donated by the Fitzhugh-Swetman Jr. family back in 2004, and it took till about 2009 for the restoration to be completed. The house is located about a mile from Eutawville River. A sawmill was set up on the property when the house was built. It took between 7 and 12 years to complete before the house was even started restoration, and further evidence now shows that Joseph Koger did not build the house, but a lot of the information on the marker is correct, except now we have found out that Thomas Ferguson was the one that owned this land and started building this house. Thomas Ferguson was a sawmill owner that had a huge sawmill on the Eutawville River during the Revolutionary War. That is the way a lot of the soldiers, like Nathaniel Greene in his journal, his colonels crossed the river. He dammed up part of the river, and he had a major sawmill there, which is just a little ways down from where the house is today. He started building the house, but he didn't finish it. The second owner, David Campbell, from Charlestown, both of them are from Charlestown, bought the house and finished the house in the late 1780s. The house is over 200 years old. It's right now considered the oldest in the county. Middleton Place predates it, like 1750s, but their main house was destroyed during the Civil War. This residence is probably the oldest house in the county, Dorchester County. During the Civil War, the stories passed down through families is that the woman that lived in the house during that period of time befriended both Union and Confederate soldiers, and this house was saved because of that. This is the famous blood stain on the floor, and the story goes that this house was used as a boarding house for men that used to work in the sawmilling business down on the river, and they would stay here for days and weeks at a time because it was before transportation. And one night, and also it was used as a stagecoach stop because it was the only house on the wire road for miles and miles. And one night, someone was spending the night here. Someone knocked on the door, and the story went that he was shot or stabbed. The house is located about 3.5 miles west of Grover. It's at the intersection of the Quaker Road and the Wire Road, and just past the house is an overpass of I-95. We would love for you to come and visit this house. It's opened a couple of times a year, but we could be reached through the Dorchester Heritage Center, 101 Ridge Street in St. George, and we're also on Facebook. If there's a group that would like to come, we will give a special tour for special groups, and we do open it, and we want to welcome everyone to come and just see this piece of history.
During World War II, the Walterboro, South Carolina airfield served as a training ground for Army airmen, including the Tuskegee Airmen, a group of African American military pilots. They formed the 332nd Fighter Group and the 477th Bombardier Group of the United States Air Force. Both dedicated and determined, they could proudly claim that none of the bombers they escorted in combat were lost to enemy fighters. On October 14, 2023, a rededication of the monument was held in Walterboro and was respectfully attended by many gratefully. the people and places of Colleton.
I am Colleton.
I am Colleton. I am Colleton.
I am Colleton.
I am Colleton.
I'm Colleton.
I am Colleton.
So come visit us today in Colleton County.